Welcome back in, everybody, to Pro Football Plus. It is a privilege to have all of you back here again. Austin is here. Shane is here. They were both kind enough to hang around and do a special segment here tonight on quarterback arm strength. Now, some of you may or may not have already seen our two videos, our two quarterback six packs, in which we covered 12, really 11 quarterbacks who may be in the 26 NFL draft. And we really talked a lot about everything. All right. Well, tonight we are focusing in on arm strength. And it's always a little difficult to pick out one attribute and completely separate it from everything else, but that's what we're trying to do. So we're not too worried about accuracy. Although, in that, I kind of, as a joke, put in the barn here. If you can hit the broadside of a barn, hopefully to some degree, right, with some of these throws. But we're not too worried about accuracy, footwork. We're not worried about what's going on between the ears or how good they are with their teammates or how well they run. It's just arm strength as determined by these guys. All right. So the chart you're looking at tonight, these guys had nothing to do with. This is all my own creation. These are my numbers. So when you start to look at, say, the historical guys, Elway and Favre here at the top, kind of a Madden rating that's not miles per hour, that's on a scale of 100 Madden rating. I got them at 97, 96. I've got Mahomes and Allen here as markers. 96s. I've got Brock Purdy down here at 85. This is all my own making, and then I added in the college guys as well for the 26th NFL draft. The experts are here now, Shane and Austin, to talk about what they're seeing when they look at arm strength based on the 24 tape or whatever they want to base it off of. All right, so open floor here. I'm going to give Shane the first word to go any direction you want to go. We can either talk about the barriers that we set and whether they're right. We can talk about any one guy. We'll go back and forth on as many guys as you want to, and then when we're done, we'll stop. All right? So if you got any questions in the comments, shoot it to us, and we'll try to make it a little bit more clear. But, Shane, go ahead. Take it away, man.
So the first thing from seeing this, Ben, that caught my attention is kind of the classic guys you went with, John Elway, Brett Favre. When you think of two guys that did it opposite, John Elway, when he started out, was just this amazing athlete. Could run as fast as anybody, could throw it as far as anybody, just did whatever he wanted on the football field. And then you had somebody that Brett Favre, had some athletic ability, won't knock it at all, but just could absolutely rocket the ball wherever he wanted. Then you look at somebody again, Mahomes, those guys that can piece it both together, agile on the feet, has a great arm talent. The guys I see in here, you see an awful lot. Like Elway, drafted baseball player. Patrick Mahomes, family of baseball. You see guys that have learned how to throw the ball, and any ball, they would have been some severe talent with. I think when you look at the list, you see that for the way that you've marked it up, Ben, a lot of the guys we talk about all fall right underneath the Lamar Jackson list, and then that's kind of where you go from there. I see Brock Purdy, hovering around right above Haynes King on that bottom line. When you're talking about arm strength, the guy that I think really popped into me as a college guy, though, Josh Allen. If you watch some of the tape of him at Wyoming, when he had absolutely nobody on his team, he just looks like he was trying to throw the ball through a wide receiver, through a barn, through a cow, through the next street sign. That guy, that's one of those ones where, when you needed a gunslinger, that's the one you pulled up. The stories about him just being able to throw the ball. I think it's interesting anytime when you talk about arm talent, because I think people see it much differently based on where they come from. Is it a pure athletic ability? Is it the ability to rotate the ball? Is it the ability to make all the throws? Arm strength can be seen in a bunch of different ways. So it's interesting to see each person's dictation on how they rank it.
Shane, I'll come back to you in a minute for who you agree on the most and who you disagree on the most. We're going to straight to Austin. I already know Austin is going to disagree on two, three, four of these, and by a lot, and that's okay because I hate groupthink. If there's one thing I cannot stand in this world, it's thinking as a group. I largely do not believe in it. There are a few exceptions, but what you're not going to get on here is groupthink. Okay, you're going to get individual thoughts, and that's what we are after here. Okay, so Austin, cover several guys at once if you want, but maybe more preferably pick out one guy, and we'll start there, and we'll get back to Shane. Okay.
Okay. I want to give a brief caveat here of sort of how I think about arm strength because I think
Yeah.
there's arm talent, which is the word Shane used, which is a whole basically puzzle, and arm strength is one of those pieces of the puzzle. And I did my best trying to break it down to just arm strength, which
Yeah.
encapsulates basically just how hard you can throw the football. There's also this aspect of mechanics that are part of it. Certain guys have mechanics that are more consistent and they can more consistently rip the ball. There are certain guys who have mechanical flaws, but when everything is synced up properly, which doesn't happen very often, can really rip it. And I'm going off of that peak. I'm not going off of necessarily the consistent rate. Like, what
Right.
do I think your peak is? So that's sort of how I'm doing it. Uh, Off the bat, I love Nico Iamaleava at the top. He absolutely has the best arm in this class, from a purely arm strength basis. The dude rips the football. Downfield, in the short and intermediate, he has a over the top throwing motion, and he throws to me sort of like a shortstop who just backhanded the ball. Um, he just fielded it backhand and needs to just throw it as hard as he can across the diamond. And that's sort of the throwing motion he has. And he generates so much power through his legs, through his core into the football, and throws a really nice tight spiral as well. Um, and then I wanted to jump down to the bottom of your list in Haynes King. He's the guy to me that has the really inconsistent mechanics. It's goofy looking, it's awkward, but he's a pretty big dude. And every once in a while, you see him sync up and actually generate power, and he can legitimately launch the ball. And so for me, would be way up my board. I mean, I didn't do all these with the same. I didn't know you had the, Elway 97 scale to
Right.
start, but for me, I'll do Nico Iamaleava would be like a 96 probably for me, and I would put Haynes King probably at like an 89.
All right. That's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you. And heads up to the audience. I only purposely showed this graph to the guys 5 minutes before we hopped on air. Okay. I wanted their reactions to this. And as we get more through the year, we'll start, kind of developing our thoughts on it. But I really just wanted reactions here. So, Austin, and that's a fair point, and not one I've really even spent as much tape time on Haynes there. So you think at his peak, when the mechanics kind of do align, he can get it on up there to an 89. It's just not always going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. And Nico up there at 96. All right. Shane, take us anywhere you want here. Just a guy you like to talk about, or who you had the biggest difference on here between what this chart has and what you were thinking.
So I think, like Austin said, I kind of went about this on a different way. Uh, like I like the way you have it set up. It's interesting to see it this way. If I'm looking at this list, though, the name that popped right into my mind is if I'm Arch Manning and I see all these guys above me, I'm gonna say, wait till you see the next time I throw a football because he's gonna go. I can. I've seen myself against four of these guys, and I'm absolutely gonna put them in the dirt. I think, like you said, and Austin mentioned it. I think Nico's far and above. Like I would I'm not a big Madden guy, but I think he definitely shows any rating you're going to put arm strength above anybody else. A different mechanic. Uh, Quarterbacks now very rarely throw directly over the top like he does. It looks odd compared to how everyone used to throw like that. That was the way that you threw a football.
Right.
And now he's kind of the dinosaur that throws out over the top, but just absolutely generates an amazing amount of rip on the ball, as Austin said. the one that I'm interested to see out of this is kind of Cade Klubnik. I think he's one where Austin mentioned. I think when he hits, he has one of the prettier balls and has the ability to absolutely rip it. But I think there's a whole bunch of other things that get in the way. He's one where sometimes you probably watch him on like a practice day and you just go, man, that guy's a lot stronger arm than I ever thought he did. And then you watch it in game and you go, where was that throw that I just saw on Tuesday? Why isn't that being thrown on Saturday morning? He's one that I'll be interested to see because I think he got better as the year got longer. I think Austin has kind of mentioned, his passion is wide receiver play. Cade Klubnik has what could be probably the best wide receiver tandem for the next couple of years if he gets the opportunity and those guys play up to talent. He has an awful lot of talent at wide receiver right now, and it's big and it's fast. And if he can show some of that arm strength, I think his numbers will jump up there, and you'll see that maybe there were times where he was taking a little off the ball because he might not have trusted what his wide receiver was going to do behind him with it.
If you're in the audience and you want to take umbrage with anything on here, the ratings themselves, the Elways, the Favres of it all, the Purdy's of it all, I don't care. Drop it in on us. We're more than happy to hear from you. I do want to ask both of you about Garrett Nussmeier specifically. So if we assume for now the baselines of Elway, Favre, Mahomes, kind of at that 97, 96-ish range, and Purdy down there at the 85 levels, assigning Nussmeier a 92, do y'all perceive his ability to throw the football stronger or deeper as better than that or worse than that? Or does that feel somewhere in the neighborhood? Austin, you first.
That's in the ballpark for me. I think he has a very strong arm. He ranks fourth in this class for me, or
Okay.
I guess in this class plus DJ Lagway. Uh, but yeah, the I think 11 or 12 guys that we ranked, he's fourth in that list for me.
Mm-hmm.
Just only behind Nico, DJ Lagway, and Drew Aller. And as you have Drew Aller up there at 94, you have Lagway a tick behind at 91. Again, he'd be somewhere, that 94 range for me. And then Nussmeier at a 92 or a 93, I think would be pretty apt.
Shane, any difference for you there on Garrett specifically?
I'm pretty dead on Austin. I have Nussmeier up there. I have Beck right below him. And then I have Allar right in that same run right there. I think, like Austin said, DJ Lagway with more time, I think his arm strength would be above that. Nussmeier, I think he's a guy that gets the maximum out of what he has, though. Mechanics are good. Turnover the ball is good. Knows Austin and I often like to talk about pitchers when it comes to quarterbacks. How many pitches do you have in your arsenal? I think Nussmeier does a great job of being able to open up his arsenal. He knows when to throw the fastball. He knows when to take a little bit off. He knows when to touch it around. And I think that's an under appreciated thing when it comes to arm strength. Like Austin said, I think a lot of when it comes to arm strength, arm talent, it's vocabulary. Austin breaks it down, in detail on how he looks at quarterbacks, and I think that's a great way to attack it. I think a lot of people, when you hear them talk, podcast, ESPN, NFL Network, I think when I hear them talk, they're talking in my mind about what's an arm talent issue versus an arm strength issue. Like Nussmeier, I think his arm strength is not an issue. I think his arm talent might not be as high as some of these other guys. His ability to kind of maneuver the ball around and move some other things and throw off a platform. But when you're talking about sheer ability to generate force behind a ball, he's going to play up in that top echelon. I think Drew Aller is one of these guys that kind of gets pushed up more about his arm strength. And there are times where I would think that if he has the arm strength that everyone else says he has, I would see it more on game film. And there's times where I don't see his ability to drive that ball that I'd love to see.
Shane, in a second, I'm going to come back to you because you mentioned early on about the ability to throw the ball with revolutions and that kind of tight throw versus guys that can just kind of generate the depth and the kind of the height and the length. I want to really want to ask you a couple of guys on this list that you think really do that more revolution style strength throw versus guys that you think on this list that are more kind of just the bigger, being able to throw the football farther kind of a throw. I'll come back to you in a second. Austin, what I want to ask you about here, I'm going to package Lenora Sellers and Sam Levitt together, and you split them apart as you see fit. I've we can talk all day about 92s versus 88s, and that's fine. I've got them at the lower end of this group of college guys, though, looking at the draft. Do you two, from an arm strength standpoint, do you have them down there somewhat, or would you push them even up more towards, say, the Nussmeyers and the Mannings, kind of a group there?
I think these are two very different throwers of the football. Lenora Sellers to me is sort of in that Haynes King category of someone who doesn't have consistent mechanics that allow him to really rip the ball very often. But I broke out the calculator. Actually, I did it on I think the back of one of these pieces of paper. I have so many pieces of paper lying around. Um, I whipped out a little Pythagorean theorem. I saw a deep throw from, I mean, in college, wide hashes, right? I saw
Yep.
a throw go from about the 40-yard line to the back right corner of the end zone from the left hash. And at first, you look at it, it looks like a 40-yard throw. No, that is a far throw because it is across the entire field.
Mm-hmm.
From football field's 160 feet. The hashes are 60 feet. So that's 100 feet basically from far hash to the sideline, right? So that's over a 30-yard throw just to get it from there. Plus you're doing it 40 yards downfield. That's like a 60-yard throw.
Huh.
So I have seen him unleash it and rip it.
And
Um,
I'm sorry, is that Sellers or Levitt we're talking about who
that
made
was
that specific throw?
that was Sellers. That was
Okay.
Lenore's.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, Lenore Sellers to me is one of those guys with inconsistent mechanics who doesn't get a lot of velocity very often, but I have seen him sync up his hips, get that shoulder hip separation, and just rip the ball. And he does it, I think, a few times this last season. I'm trying to remember what game that was. Um, It was one of the games where he was playing another one of the quarterbacks because I watched the full game and was watching both quarterbacks at the same time. Uh, was that a, did they play Texas? Was it a Texas game? I can't even remember. But yeah, they that game, I think there was one specific game where it just felt like he was in sync, that his body was feeling good or something, and he was ripping throws. And so I have his arm strength up there. To me, it's actually right below Garrett Nussmeier, who we just talked about on the rankings. So yeah, I think he's definitely in the low 90s compared to Levitt, who I think is somewhere down there um, in the mid to upper 80s.
Fair enough. Austin, I'm going to come back to you in a second for final thoughts on anything here that you want to talk about. Shane, I do want to ask you guys here that are more of those kind of fast revolution type throwers versus, hey, I can just launch the ball type of throwers.
Well, I think there's some different components to, like Austin mentioned. So the one I'll talk about off the top is Nico. When you talk about revolutions and that spiral on a football, that's a stiff wrist and that's the last finger on the ball as it accelerates out of your hand. Nico throws over the top, and when you see that ball go, you see the X. Like if you close in on that ball, that is the X of that football spinning at the fastest possible rate. When you look on this list and you're talking about somebody that does that, that's Brett Favre. Now he didn't always know where it was going, but he threw it so hard and with such a spiral that regardless of the weather, regardless of what was going on, that ball cut through. There's guys that don't have that same spin, so their arm strength doesn't show as much. One person that we talked about on the run, Sam Levitt is a guy that I see this happen with. When Austin talks about not being able to get the mechanics to hit every single time, Sam Levitt, when he pushes through and he really lets go of the ball, you can see it turn over beautifully. It goes right to the target where it is. When he's floating around and he kind of cocks his wrist and he doesn't get the same throw, that's when you see it wobble. It's not an arm strength issue. It's literally just a mechanical thing. He just needs to be able to lock in and get that going. In the beginning, I mentioned Josh Allen. That's a guy that's going to plant his back foot and absolutely murder a ball. Um, I don't see anybody in the NFL that has that same type of run now. The stories and the look of wide receivers' hands that played with Brett Favre, where their fingers don't face in the right directions anymore, that's not a mistake. That gentleman threw the ball as hard as he possibly could every single throw. If you were a tight end, God bless you, because you were only 5 yards away from him. You were hoping that you were running down the field, at least you had a chance to get away from it. Those guys that can generate that's few and far between. You have to have the beautiful mark of mechanical perfection in that, and you need to be touched. There needs to be a little bit where your arm from birth, if it was skipping stones across the lake, if it was throwing a snowball, if it was whatever it was, you've always had greater arm talent than the kid next to you. Those guys show up. That Brett Favre, Patrick Mahomes, Nico. I can only imagine playing dodgeball against this guy. These are things where it doesn't matter what it is. If it's throwing a ball, he's going to generate it.
The Brett Favre stories, the options when he threw the football were interception, highlight play, bounce off the receiver's chest, bounce off the receiver's face mask, or break a receiver's finger. Those were the options every time Favre
threw the football. The thing about Brett Favre is, and you talk about Atlanta trading him. You watch some of the tape of him at practice, and Jerry Glanville's crazy. He left tickets for Elvis every single day in the hopes that Elvis would show up. And I love Glanville. He's still coaching. He loves football. But if I watched some of the tape of Brett Favre when he was in Atlanta, I would have traded him right away too. There's a higher chance that Brett Favre is going to hit the peanut salesman in Section C, row 105, than there is that he's going to hit the guy I'm looking for. And I, at Southern Mississippi, I guess that played. But when you're in the NFL and you go, I don't think the guy's ever looked at the playbook, and I just know he throws the ball hard, I'm going to go look for somebody else that can play quarterback for me too.
Yeah, that's goodness. Yeah, for those of you who haven't watched Favre, go check it out. And for those of you who haven't heard of Glanville before, go check him out on Wikipedia. It's worth doing. Austin, your final thoughts here on anything chart otherwise, bud?
I'll touch on DJ Lagway briefly. He's got a rocket for an arm. The ball, he's one of those guys who you can tell throwing off platform that he's got arm strength. You don't have to see him plant off his back foot, drive, and really throw the ball to get that sort of whoa, that was special. He can do that running to his right, off platform, off balance. He's got that. It's the same thing Mahomes has, where he can get really good zip standing in the pocket on balance, but what's special is when you can do that off balance. And Lagway has that, and I think his arm strength is going to be really high by the time he is, fully done developing 2 years from now, and has sort of honed his mechanics, hopefully, and hopefully can sort of really get his whole body into it because he's a big dude and has a really good just arm. Without talking about getting his lower half into the throw, just the arm is really special, I think.
Very good. Shane, final thoughts, man?
I think, like Austin said, he's a good guy to end on. Sheer talent, athletic-wise, arm strength through the roof. Do you become a quarterback? Because I feel like there are other guys that could have made it on this list for arm strength alone, but we don't talk about them anymore because they're not in the league. You could have a guy like Jeff George could absolutely murder a ball, but wasn't always the best teammate, and works his way out of the league. Randall Cunningham, another guy that could absolutely just destroy a ball, and he was a supreme athlete. A mixture of everything. So there's a bunch of different ways to think about it. You can be that stone pillar and stand in the backfield and just be able to rocket a ball, or you can just be an athlete and run around. arm strength shows in many ways, and I think this group will be an interesting group to see as the year progresses.
All right. Well,
So
we
wait,
appreciate the
quickly,
extra.
Shane, I
I'm
just
sorry.
want to, if and Ben too, if you had to put a 99 for arm strength, because I think we highest one was 97 with Elway. If you had to have a 99, who would it be? Or is there
Ooh, I
not
don't
one?
know that.
Has there never been a 99 arm strength?
In my head, there wasn't, but now, who's the kid who flamed out with the Vikings a few years ago? That did have a huge arm and just really couldn't play quarterback. That's the only kid that would come to mind. Is that boy? He just had a monster arm, but I can't even remember his name now because he wasn't very good.
I'll tell you one guy that if you're going for the history books, Warren Moon could absolutely destroy a ball.
Hmm.
And I mean, he spent a lot of years having to play in the CFL in the beginning, which throwing in like Edmonton and Saskatoon and everywhere else where you have to play against anybody up there. But he's a guy that had that upper level arm strength. If you're really going about, I think Brett Favre's up there. I think Dan Marino is up in that upper echelon. Marino
Yeah,
could absolutely turn a ball.
Yeah. So for me, it's a guy who was drafted in the seventh round last year, and it's Joe Milton.
yeah,
Joe Milton, I
Oh
think,
yeah,
has the strongest arm to ever have thrown a football.
when they have to take you outside because you keep hitting the roof on throws, that's a scary situation. Yeah, he's a punter with that cannon.
Yeah. Again, like you mentioned, some of these guys can't really play quarterback, but can throw the hell out of a football. Joe Milton is, well, we don't know. I don't want to say he can't play quarterback. He is very young and could develop, but we haven't seen him do it yet.
got to be frustrating having an arm that big and just not be able to put it together. Hmm. All right, everybody, thank y'all for watching. Shane, Austin, thank you as always. We'll be back in 2 weeks with the wide receivers, so check it out. It's Pro Football Plus. We've already done now. This is the third quarterback show, so go check out the others as well. Thank y'all very much. Have a great one. Goodbye.